Hello everyone and welcome to my video on Devour. I want to cover some basic tips and tricks in this video. It's not going to be a full walkthrough of any of the levels. Basically just want to have a resource available for those new to the game starting out, like I was a couple weeks ago. They're are just looking to get the basics a little more in depth than what the game itself will cover during the tutorials. It does kind of just dump you right in and with a bit of a learning curve. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into it. So the game Devour is a horror survival game, and you can play it either single player or cooperatively with up to 4 people. All the footage that you're going to see in this video is shot from my single player sessions, and the story is a basic B-movie horror plot. It gives you just enough to kind of put the framework together. The first map, the Farmhouse, you are up against a cult leader who has summoned this powerful demon. They become the on-earth avatar of this demon, and you play as a cult member trying to stop them and banish them back to hell. And the maps that came out subsequent to the Farmhouse are basically like sequels, if you want to look at it in movie terms, where a different member of the cult will decide to follow in the footsteps of the cult leader and attempt summoning the demon again, because they're apparently very, very bad at pattern recognition. And that's really about all the story the game gives you. Before I dive into the gameplay itself, I did want to cover my settings a little bit. You'll notice on my sound, I have the music relatively low compared to the sound effects. It's really important to hear some of the sound cues in the game. The master volume, you'll notice, is relatively low. That's because I play quite a bit with my friends online. When we play this game, I want to make sure I hear them over the game sounds, because communication is important if you're playing on the team. You're also going to notice that I disabled the jump scare sounds because I play with headphones and my eardrums blowing out all the time. Another setting I want to cover, I think is pretty important, is the field of view setting. I'm starting out this video with the field of view set at the default, which is pretty low, and I'm going to widen it up to the maximum, which is 95%. You can see that once you have the field of view at 90 degrees or higher, it's really easy to see down both sides of the corner of the house. You can see all the way to that fire pit on the left side, and then off to the right hand side there's the back porch, and beyond that the cellar stairs. Some people are uncomfortable playing at around or above 90 degrees field of view because it gets kind of a fisheye effect and can be disorientating. You might have issues going through doorways if you're strafing toward them sometimes, for example. Although I really do find that in a game like this, the extra awareness it gives you is very helpful. So if you can get used to the higher field of view, I recommend trying it out. Not directly related to either sound or field of view, another setting, if you're playing with a controller, I find very important, is having the controller vibrate. There's a heartbeat cue I'll talk more about later that's really easy to pick up on if you have the vibrations on your controller, so I recommend that as well. So now getting into the gameplay piece, you just saw me release the goats from the cage. They knocked down the door to the basement of the house, so now I can get into the house when I'm ready to. And the ultimate goal of the first level is to sacrifice 10 goats. You lure the goats with the bundles of hay, and then you toss the goats into the fire pit, which you saw me light with the gas cans just a second ago. So if you're going to stockpile materials and prepare in the first level, I recommend that you stick 10 gas cans, or 9 if you pre-lit the fire, as I did, behind the fire pit, so that we can load up the fire pit with fresh gas while you're facing down the pathway toward the house. I'll explain why that's important later. And you can stockpile some hay back there if you wish. It's I do a couple. It can be helpful for reasons I'll explain later. Although there's plenty in the front and backyard typically, so you don't have to go out of your way to stockpile a bunch. Now there are valid reasons to not pre-light the fire. You can stage a goat in the fire pit and then dump the gas on when you're ready to burn it, although for single play it's easier to pre-light and toss the goat in and then reload with fresh gas when you have the opportunity. The goat staging probably is more applicable to co-op play, so you can decide how fast you're going to progress the ritual, which I'll get more in depth into later. At this point, I skipped ahead a little bit to edit out some of the stockpiling, and now I'm moving into the house. At this point, you can't really explore much of the house until you get to the initiating event. Each level kind of has one of these. They follow a similar structure. You're going to encounter Anna at the end of this hallway coming up, and once you get close enough, she activates. She'll just teleport off to some random part of the house, and then you can start exploring the rest of the house. During this stage, Anna is going to be relatively docile for a long period of time. If you wait long enough, she may activate in what they call hunt mode, where she'll start pursuing players and taking them out. But this is your opportunity to explore the house, get all the rooms unlocked, release all the goats. There's also, besides the cage you saw me open earlier, there's also another one in the attic. Once you get all that opened up, you're pretty much ready to start the ritual by burning the goats. And then the gameplay is going to change significantly. So I will jump ahead to a little bit of the goat burning and a couple of the major milestones that you're going to hit as you're playing through the game. One other thing worth noting before I skip ahead to the ritual stages is as you're exploring the house and collecting keys and resources in the first 3 levels, which would be the farmhouse, the asylum, and the inn, they all have a similar structure where the doors that can be locked or unlocked are randomized, so you're not always going to find the same door locked in every playthrough, and the keys can be different locations, so which kind of changes up the game as well. The 4th map, the town, which I'll cover a bit later, the mechanics are different for that one, but in the first 3, don't expect to see the same doors locked or unlocked. And it's also worth mentioning that the front door and the back door of the farmhouse are always locked, but they can always be opened from the inside. So you can't access them from the outside, but if you're on the inside, it's important to make sure you get those doors open. So in case you're outside and you need to get in quickly, you'll be able to do so. Another important mechanic is every level is going to have one minion creature you're going to face in addition to the demon. In this case, it's these crawling demons. They will come out periodically throughout the level. The further you get into the ritual, the more they will spawn. And additionally, the more players you're playing in co-op also seems to affect how many spawn. The more players, the amount you're going to face scales up. So you saw me use the flashlight there. The UV power to burn it, make it disappear. In later portions of the game, where you're going to be focusing your UV use against the demon itself, you're going to want to try to dodge these guys as much as possible without actually burning them. In cases where you can't do it, try to burn them as quickly as possible and move on to conserve your UV power, because you're going to want to save that for facing off against the demon. As I've said, I've skipped ahead. I have a goat headed to the fire pit, and I will be tossing it in here. It's important to note that when you reach the fire pit, there's going to be a prompt where you need to push your interact button, not your drop button. If you drop the goat, it's just going to fall on the ground near the fire pit, and you will have to hope that it goes for nearby food, which is why I suggested you might want to stockpile a couple near the fire pit, because that way the goat won't wander off and will be difficult to recapture. But so it's important to use the interact key. You're going to toss the goat in the fire, and then I'm going to immediately reload the fire pit with more fire. And as I mentioned earlier, I like to stack the extra gas cans behind, so I can reload it and aim down that walkway to catch Anna if she's pursuing me up the pathway. Being the first goat, you hear her activate. That means hunt mode is now on. And she's actively going to be pursuing me throughout the level, which I will get into the mechanics of that shortly. Now when Anna is in hunt mode, you're going to have a couple different clues when she's getting close to you. You can hear her moaning. It's kind of that distorted filter on her voice that carries from pretty long distance. It can be hard to pin her down using just that. Even wearing headphones, telling what direction that noise is coming from can be difficult. And especially if you're inside the building, it's impossible to tell whether she's on the same floor as you, a floor above or floor below. The directionality of the sound is a little off in this game. The other indicator you're going to have is when she gets close enough, the flashlight is going to flicker. And this is especially noticeable when you're in a multiplayer game. You can tell when she's locked on you specifically because that heartbeat I mentioned earlier will trigger when she's locked on you and hunting you. You can also feel it in the single player game, obviously much more often. And that can be a real good indicator when she's after you, especially if you have your light turned off because you're trying to hide. Hiding, I've not found to be very effective. You can delay her, but she will always eventually seem to find you. It's more of a viable strategy in a multiplayer game. In single player, you're better off playing a little more aggressively and actually going after her to hit her with the UV, which will stun her, which I'll demonstrate here. And the amount of stuns it takes to pacify her and knock her out of hunt mode completely increases the further you get into the ritual. On normal, if you're at 1, 2, or 3 goats, it takes 1 UV stun to pacify her. If she's at 4 through 7, it takes 2. And if she's at 8 and 9, it takes 3. And obviously, once you burn the 10th goat, you win. I will showcase this later in the video, but the cycle time between how fast she goes from being passive to actively hunting you again shortens dramatically, especially at level 9. It's almost instantaneous. So here I have skipped ahead to the point where I'm going to be burning the 7th goat, and the reason I chose this milestone is goat 7 is going to change some of the game mechanics. The first and most noticeable thing you're going to see once you hit goat 7 is that the thunderstorm is going to start. The thunderstorm has its pros and cons. I kind of like the fact that the occasional flashes of lightning give you vastly improved visibility. You can basically see across the entire level instead of having to rely on the very near vision of the flashlight. The downside to that is that if you're playing with a controller, the thunder is going to rumble, which is going to affect your sensitivity for picking up on that heartbeat indicator, and as well as the fact that the sound of the thunder itself is going to drown out the other heartbeat indicator as well. Kind of to counteract that, Anna herself takes on a very different demonic droning sound versus her earlier kind of just filtered moaning, which can make her easier to hear from longer distance. That can also be a little disorientating trying to figure out where she is, even more so than she was before. Now, another mechanic, when you get to the point where it takes multiple stuns to pacify Anna, is that she'll develop what the developers in the community refer to as red-eye mode. Immediately after being stunned, there is a chance, and the further into the ritual you get, the higher this chance seems to be, until it's almost a given it's going to happen, where her eyes will turn red for a few seconds after being stunned. And when her eyes are red, the UV light will do nothing to affect her. It doesn't slow her down, it won't stun her or pacify her. So your best strategy, once you get to the point where you need to do multiple stuns to stop her, is following the initial stun, run away, get distance for at least a few seconds, and then if you're feeling lucky and have a decent amount of UV charge, try to hunt her down again right away to finish off the pacification for that particular hunt mode, or just give yourself some time to breathe and recharge and put off dealing with her. But either way, it's important to be aware of red-eye mode. It can be hard to see, especially when she starts moving faster. So when in doubt, just get distance for a few seconds for it to reset. The next big milestone is going to be Goat 8. At Goat 8, Anna changes in 2 significant ways. One, she grows a pair of horns out of her head, which is merely just cosmetic, although in addition to that, her movement speed is vastly increased. And that will include both her regular movement speed, and when I say regular, I mean hunt mode, when she's not being stunned by the UV, and her movement speed while she's being stunned also increases. You need to be aware that typically when you start putting the UV light on her, you're going to have to back away and be pretty careful with your dodging technique. Here I am. This is the last stun of her hunt cycle in after Goat 9. I just wanted to kind of show how fast the turnaround is between her final stun into pacification and her ramping up back in hunt mode again. As you can see, it's only a few seconds. That's what makes the final stage so difficult for the ritual. I still have yet to beat this solo. I can get the Goat 9 pretty consistently, but as you can see, it's a challenge because you're constantly fighting her in her rage state. But hopefully, the tips you've seen here help give you the basic mechanics of the game. And I'm also going to include a little bit of footage from each of the subsequent levels to show the mechanics of those levels, call out what's unique, and how you should best prep for those. One last thing I wanted to talk about before I move on to discussing the Asylum is the differences that you're going to see if you're playing it in single player on the Farmhouse versus playing it cooperatively. If you play a single player and you should get taken out by either one of the crawling demons or Anna herself, the game is over. There's no second chance. You're done and got to restart. If you're playing it cooperatively, if a demon takes you out, you're going to drop exactly where it happened. And if Anna grabs you, she's going to run you off to some random spot on the level and drop you. And while you're in your down state, you're still in the game in that you can crawl around. You can spot items for your friends, but you can't do anything else until they find a med kit and carry it to you and pick you up using the med kit. Similarly, if one of your friends goes down, you're going to see an outline of their body, and you can take a med kit to them and revive them. And that all makes playing cooperatively much more forgiving because the game will not end until all the players are down at the same time. Now, conceptually, the Asylum is not very different than the Farmhouse. There's still 10 ritual items to deal with. In this case, they are rats instead of goats, and you're going to be luring them with plates of rotten food versus bundles of hay. But otherwise, very, very similar. The initiating event for this one is a little more dramatic than the first one, where you simply walk up on Anna. You're going to find Molly in the basement, put a fuse in the breaker box, and electrocute her. That will initiate her to start walking around the level, but also will start spawning the keys for you to pick up and search. Similar to the Farmhouse, the keys that you find on the doors that are going to be locked are going to be randomized. Molly behaves very much like Anna did in the first level. The stun mechanics are very similar. You still get the thunderstorm that starts at Goat 7. Still get the speed buffs that occur at 8 and 9. The biggest difference between the Asylum and the Farmhouse is that this is probably the easiest level to play solo. And the reason I say that is because you can preload a rat onto the electroshock gurney and preload a fuse into the fuse box, and the switch is a separate event. So if you stockpile your fuses down in the basement, you'll need 11 instead of 10 because you need the first one to initiate Molly. But if you stockpile your fuses down in the basement, you can have a rat staged on the gurney, have one in your hand, flip the switch, then immediately load up the next rat, pop a new fuse in the fuse box, and hit the switch. And I'll show what that looks like here in a second. Another mechanic I'd like to point out is you saw me on the way down into the basement. I knocked over a garbage can. The garbage cans in the Asylum are similar to the way the cages for the goats were in the Farmhouse. You need to knock over all the garbage cans that have rats in them to get them out into the level. And there will be exactly 10 rats once you knock over all the garbage cans. There's typically, I believe, 4 garbage cans per level, and I believe only 2 of them have 5 rats each. And then right here you will see the median creatures that spawn in the Asylum level. These are the wheelchair demons. They behave very much like the crawling demons from the Farmhouse level. They're possibly more annoying in this level than the crawling demons were in the Farmhouse, simply because they're a little bit wider to take up more room, and a lot of the areas in the Asylum tend to be a little more claustrophobic and cramped in. Additionally, I didn't really discuss the battery mechanic very much on the Farmhouse. You'll see that I picked up a battery early in this level and activated it, which gets that orange border in addition to the purple border for the UV, and that will get degraded first and doesn't require recharging. It's Just kind of an extra asset to help you have more UV to deal with multiple enemies and then Azazel themselves during the harder portions of the level. Each level starts out on normal anyway with 4 batteries, and as you use them, they will eventually respawn the level. And on the subject of respawning resources, there is a finite level of ritual item attractors, such as the hay and the rotten food, in each level. However, as you use them, those will also respawn. So you don't really need to worry about running out of stuff. As the game goes through, it will eventually refresh what you've gone through. Now, because the mechanics between the Farmhouse and the Asylum are really very similar, I just kind of want to demonstrate what I was talking about with the double rat burning and just kind of move on. So, like putting the goats into the fire pit in the Farmhouse, you want to make sure you use the interact key and not the drop key when you're placing a rat on the table. And then I'm going to head out and find another plate of food and another rat. One difference I will say there is between the rats and the goats is the rats are smaller, harder to see. They tend to move around, seems more often and faster than what the goats did in the Farmhouse. They can wander far afield quicker than you would expect. But other than that, as I said, the mechanics are very, very similar. So once I get these 2 rats burned, I'll go ahead and move on to the inn. The inn does introduce some unique mechanics, so I'll probably spend a little more time on that one. So, as I said before, I have a rat in my hand. I'm going to go ahead and approach the switch because I already preloaded the fuse earlier. Flip it, and then replace the rat once it burns out, and replace the fuse, flip the switch again, and that's it. 2 rats in a very short period of time. So it's a little easier to increment this one if you're playing solo, because you can jump in numbers of 2, which means you're going to go from 8 to 10, clearing that really difficult 9th ritual stage. So as I was saying, the mechanics for the inn are quite a bit different. The first and biggest is the fact that instead of the centralized ritual location like the fire pit or the electroshock gurney in the first 2 levels, there's these shrines that are scattered around that you'll be needing to burn your offerings at. So there's 10 different shrines to keep track of. And instead of having to lure your ritual items toward you, like with the hay or like the plates of food, you actually need these bottles of chlorine or bleach, whatever they are, to cleanse pools of water, because you'll be collecting eggs throughout the level, and the eggs need to be cleaned before they can be burned at the shrines. The only locations to clean the eggs before you sacrifice them at the shrines are these pools of water here. I am cleaning the one in the back first. Once the Azazel avatar, Zara in this case, is activated, you really shouldn't be using this one in the back. You should be using the one in the middle, so you can keep an eye on the various approaches. As you can see, when I grab this bottle and go back to cleanse the pool in the middle, I can crouch down to this corner, and I can see the approach on the left toward the cave that we'll be going to initiate Zara here in a second, and off to the right, the entrance to the pool cleaning area. So from this point, we can head out away from the pools and see there's a shrine over here by the cave entrance. Looks like we got one, so I'll make note of which one that is. And head into the cave, which will kick off the initiating event with Zara. She's going to puke up an egg, and you will collect the eggs, and she'll continue to do that throughout the level. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, eggs are easy because they're not going to run around like the goats and the rats do. However, the devs thought of that. Your minion creature in this level is going to be a spider, and the spiders will grab any eggs that are unattended and run off with them. In fact, they will prioritize stealing eggs and hiding them versus attacking you. which is actually really obnoxious. So the reason why the egg cleaning is an important mechanic in this level is each egg actually has a symbol underneath a layer of dirt that is associated with the shrine it needs to be burned at. It has to be burned at the correct shrine to advance the ritual. So you have to go to the pool, you have to clean the egg, and then after that you have to go hunt down the correct shrine. And similar to the first two levels, there's a number of keys that are randomly covered throughout the level. Different doors will be locked, and unlike the other levels, Zara will kind of wander around the level when she's not in hunt mode and puke up more eggs. I believe there's a hard limit of 5 eggs being active at a time. My friends and I have never seen more than that, but I'm not 100% certain of that. There are 2 other aspects that make this level unique compared to the first 2. In addition to the spiders that will spawn and either attack you or move eggs around, you also will occasionally, especially as the rituals progress, you'll come across webs that'll be strung across a narrow opening, so you need to use your UV light to burn through. That later in the level will get very, very stressful because you're burning UV constantly trying to get the webs cleared, being attacked by the spiders in the narrow hallways, especially upstairs. And because of the nature of the shrines being randomized, you can't really control which shrines you have to save for last. Ideally, you clear out the top floor first and do the bottom floor in the late stages of the game where it's easier, but that's not always an option, unfortunately. The last difference to note in this level applies specifically to playing multiplayer. In the first 2 levels, when you get taken by either Anna or Molly, they run off to some random portion of the level and drop you, and there's a chance for your friends to revive you. In this level, if Zara downs you, she drags you off into her spider burrow somewhere in the caves, and you have to kind of do a maze mini game where you have to crawl out of the maze. And that can take a little bit sometimes because there's a handful of exits to the maze, but all but one will be webbed off. So you have to find the one that's open. Until you get out of that mini game, it's impossible for your friends to come revive you. So that adds another layer of difficulty to this level that does not exist in the first 2. If you do get downed by a spider, which is possible, similar to being downed by either the wheelchair demons or the crawling demons, you'll just drop where you are. That maze minigame only applies to if Zara captures you. So that really wraps up the inn as far as what makes it different from other levels. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate burning one of the eggs. All the rest of the mechanics are the same as the previous levels. The difficulty increments at the same ritual milestones, and the stun mechanics are, as far as I can tell, and my friends can tell, is identical. Although her hunt mode figure is vastly different than what her pacified figure is, which makes it easy to tell what she's up to. And now we're finally at the town, the newest map that the developers added just a couple months ago. The town has an interesting hybrid of mechanics from the first 2 levels, as well as mechanics from the inn, and even a couple that are wholly unique to itself. So this one will take a little bit to go over. The initiating event is actually 2-stage. Sam, the avatar of Azazel in this level, is always in the upper floor of the saloon, but I don't want to trigger him until I get my hands on a pack of matches. The rituals in this particular level go through a couple stages. You need to find pentagrams that are scattered throughout the level. You need to light the candles around the pentagram with the matches. Then you need to find a book associated with that pentagram, activate the book, and then go burn the book. So it's a little complex, and I will walk through each stage of that in this video. So now that I have my pack of matches, I'm skipping ahead to the saloon. As I said, it's a 2-stage activation, so I have to go upstairs and go into the upper room in the saloon and pick up a key to the church. That will be the first portion of the activation, and then once you actually reach the church itself up on the hill, that's the final portion of the activation. Once you have Sam fully activated, then the rest of the level opens up, similar to the previous levels. In this one, the doors and such are not randomly locked. You always will find the same amount of keys, and the keys go to lockboxes that have these books in them. The books are your ritual objects in this level. What is randomized is the order that the books are activated in. Only a certain number of pentagrams will be active at a time, and you can only activate books at the associated pentagram. It's pretty easy to find which ones are activated once you get the church opened up. The lanterns out in front of the various businesses will have their light lit. That means that one you can go light the matches for the pentagram and unlock the associated lockbox. Where the randomization and difficulty lies in this level is if you open up lockboxes where you can't activate the book and take care of it promptly, the ghosts in the level, which are your minion creatures, can take books and run off with them. If they take an unactivated book, it can be very difficult to find. If you activate the book, it will start glowing, which makes it easier to see, both if you drop it or if a ghost runs off with it. So I really recommend only unlocking a lockbox that you can immediately deal with by activating the book. Now, this does sound like a lot of aspects to keep track of at one time. However, the game does help you out a little bit. This is the only level where in your key list, if you push the K button on your keyboard or the left bumper on the controller, you will see a list of what keys you have. And in this particular level, because there's so many keys and they're so integral to the way the level plays out, it will gray out keys that have already been used, which actually is really helpful. Once you have your book activated, you take it back to the church. There's the fire pit in the center of the church where you can stage a book, and then you pour fuel on it to burn it, just like any other ritual item, until you get to a count to 10 and win. And that is the mechanics of the town in a nutshell. The places where the town adds some twists are to Sam, the avatar of Azazel. He has a gun in this level, and he can one-shot shoot you with it, put you down. Although it's not consistently one-shot, sometimes it's just a wound that slows you down temporarily until he runs up and grabs you. It's a little inconsistent. I'm not sure what drives which behaviors. And another mechanic is if he grabs a player and puts them in a downed state, typically in the first 3 levels, that player gets taken somewhere else off in the level, and what that does to help you as a player is it clears the avatar from that particular area. So like, let's say you're standing in a group and he grabs one of your friends and runs off, everyone else is safe for a couple seconds while he deals with the that person. This one's different. If he takes one of your friends in a multiplayer mode, they instantly vanish. They're banished like to a hell dimension where they have to fight ghosts to become free. And every time someone goes down, I'm not sure if it's sequential downs, if it's based on how far the rituals progressed, or a combination of both, but there'll be more and more ghosts from the fight, and take longer for them to get freed. But what's different about that is Sam will not move from that particular spot, so he might, in cases later into the ritual, he might become active again very, very shortly thereafter and not be far away from the rest of the group, so you got to keep an eye out for that. Sam's stun mechanics are still very, very similar to everyone else's, so there's no real surprises there. Thank goodness. One thing I don't think I mentioned previously, if you come across one of the avatars of Azazel in their non-hunt mode, they won't immediately trigger into hunt mode unless you stand too close to them for too long of a period of time or stare directly at them for a while. And you can even walk like right past them if you have the room. Bumping into them on stairs or a narrow hallway, not a good idea, so try to keep your distance. If you're going to stockpile or pre-stage items to make the level go as smoothly as possible, my suggestion would be to put matchbooks near each pentagram. So you need to find 10 of those, and stockpile your fuel in the church before you start getting into the later ritual stages. Having those items in place will make the book activation and destruction goes as quickly and smoothly as possible. One detail of note that's helpful if you come across a book that is not activated, that you need to find its ritual location. The symbol on the cover of the book is always going to match the symbol that's by the door or the sign for the business or location associated with it. So, like for instance, the mine book I'm carrying right now has the pickaxe on it. If I come across that when it's not activated, I need to find the proper pentagram. That's how you line those up. There really isn't much else to cover in the town that hasn't already been covered in one of the previous sections of the video. I am going to demonstrate what it looks like when a ghost runs off with one of the books, so you can see what the glow looks like if you come across that. And hopefully this video helps someone that's new to the game. If this did help you, then please give me a like, subscribe, or leave a comment. It'd be much appreciated. And hope you guys have fun out there. Bye.